Can I speak now?
Yes.
Hello everyone and very welcome to our presentation about the hashtag #MeToo. Hopefully you've already had a great experience here in Sala and that you will learn even more after our time in here. As Christine said, my name is Tilda and beside me I have my friends Annika and Christina and we're attending the last year of the Social Studies program. We're going to tell you about what the hashtag is and why it is important when we're discussing the topic gender. Since we live in Sweden, which is an outstanding country regarding equality, we want to start with an overview of the Swedish attitude to equality.
So Sweden has for a long time believed in feminism and the complete equality between genders. And this means that everyone should have equal power, both over their own lives and over society. And as a country, Sweden has come very far in this regard. In general, women and men in Sweden have the same opportunities, but we do still have a long way to go. The Swedish approach to gender equality is kind of unique compared to other countries, and it is the foundation in the state's work. The principle is that no matter your gender, you should be able to study, work, and have a family on your own terms. And like I previously said, there is a lot of work left until the goal is reached. Women still earn less money than a man for the same work. Female-dominated work is not prioritized. Women still do more of the unpaid work at home. Women get catcalled walking down the street. And like you will hopefully understand after this presentation, women are still often sexually abused. And this is sexism, the discrimination because of someone's gender and the belief that one gender is superior to others.
The actual hashtag #MeToo and the movement started in the United States in the fall of 2017, where it also had the biggest effect and reached out to the biggest group of people. The hashtag exploded when the famous actress Alyssa Milano posted a tweet where she encouraged all women that had been sexually harassed to answer her with the hashtag #MeToo to show how widespread this issue really is. Within days, millions of women and some men have used Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to disclose the harassment and abuse they had faced in their own lives. This happened in connection with the rape accusations where multiple people, women, were involved, and it was aimed at a Hollywood producer. But the whole thing got shut down by the film industry. Later on, the #MeToo movement became a place where women from all industries across the world could talk about their struggles and what they had experienced. Please note that we're going to talk about men and women in this presentation, but we do realize that there can be more than one gender and that non-binary people face huge difficulties. But as I said, we're going to focus on men and women in this presentation.
So, during the #MeToo movement, lots of culturally and politically powerful people were accused of sexual assault. Some of the most acknowledged cases regarded famous TV hosts, comedians, and politicians. But the most famous sexual assault case that was brought into the light in Sweden during #MeToo is the allegations against Jean-Claude Arnault. He was accused of various kinds of sexual harassment and sexual assaults by 18 women, and this was in an article in the Swedish newspaper Dagens Nyheter, which in English means the news of today. Arnault's wife, Katarina Frostenson, was at the time in 2017 a board member in the Swedish Academy. Through his wife and the Academy, Arnault had access to apartments in both Paris and Stockholm, where most of the alleged assaults took place. The Swedish Academy has existed since 1786, and they are the ones responsible for the Nobel Prize in Literature, which means that they have a lot of power in Swedish culture. The scandal regarding Arnault has shaken the Academy to its core and caused many board members retirement in protest of the sexual assaults. At the end of 2018, Jean-Claude Arnault was sentenced to 2 years in prison for raping one woman.
One other really controversial case in the Me Too movement in Sweden was one about a journalist named Fredrik Virtanen. Actress, journalist, and blogger Cissi Wallin accused Virtanen of drugging and raping her in 2006. This led to further allegations and reports to the police against him. Neither of the reports led to any sort of conviction or legal consequence for Virtanen. But he did face a lot of criticism from many people, and this led to him taking a break from journalism. This is how it went with many of the cases in the accusations during the Me Too. The Shortgården case was pretty much the only public case that led to an actual legal consequence. Several newspapers were criticized for publishing names of the accused people before the cases even had gone to court, because this is slander and it's not according to the law, you can't do this. But contrary, some newspapers were criticized for not publishing the same names.
There were lots of journalists that were questioning if the people accused of crimes should be fired from their jobs or not, which was the case for many. The people that were openly accused of sexual assault often faced hate online and often had to quit their jobs. The question that was discussed is if it is right to do this before someone has been proven guilty. Is it okay to accuse someone for a crime they haven't yet been convicted of? Technically, the person who's making the accusations herself, openly in the media, can be making herself a criminal by slandering the perpetrator. Everybody is innocent until proven guilty, but we also know that sexual assault victims rarely win in court against their abusers, so it is a difficult situation. Even though you are innocent until proven guilty, if you actually committed a crime, you will never not be guilty, and the victim deserves justice. Obviously, not everyone could be positive towards this movement. There are always opponents to revolutions, and that can be seen through articles and hashtags. One journalist, Staffan Heinersson, was fired from the paper Aftonbladet, one of the biggest Swedish newspapers, for writing a chronicle where he compared the #MeToo movement to Joseph Stalin's eradication of different-minded people in the Soviet Union.
Another reported about happening in relation to #MeToo is the Statement Music Festival. The festival was a reaction to the horrific amounts of sexual assault reports from different music festivals during the summer of 2017. The idea of the festival is that everybody except men are allowed in. And the festival happened in August of 2018 and featured only women, transgender and non-binary artists. But since then, the event has been convicted of discrimination for not allowing men inside. And during the Me Too movement, there were lots of other hashtags created. Pretty much every group of people connected in some way had their own hashtag at one point. And some of the most famous examples are #Tystnadtagning, which represent actors and actresses, #Med vilken rätt, which represent lawyers, and #I maktens korridorer, which represent politicians. And this just proves how big of a problem sexism is in every part of society.
Sweden has approved a law recognizing that sex without consent is rape, even when there's no threat or force involved. This new law came into force in July of 2018, and it says that a person must give clear consent, verbally or physically. Under the previous legislation, prosecutors had to prove that the perpetrator had used violence or that the victim had been under the influence of alcohol or another vulnerable condition in order to secure a rape conviction.
And the new legislation introduces two new offenses, which is negligent rape and negligent sexual abuse. And these carry a maximum prison time of 4 years. According to the government, the negligence aspect in these crimes focuses on the fact that one of the parties did not participate voluntarily, and it stated that this new legislation will make it possible to convict more people of sexual assault. This new law states that the lack of consent is enough to constitute a crime. The Swedish government said that the law is based on the obvious, which is that sex must be voluntary. You don't necessarily have to say yes, but the consent has to be obvious for all parties involved. Samtyckeslagen, as the law is called in Swedish, states that passivity is not a sign of agreement to sex. An active agreement is required, and activists around the world have welcomed this new law, but critics say that the law will not increase the number of rape convictions.
The reason this law was passed could be because of the increasing number of reported sexual offenses, or maybe the very low conviction rates on the reported crimes. The increasing rape and sexual assault statistics could be due to a change in the Swedish society defines sexual harassment, abuse, and rape. We think that the #MeToo movement made a lot of Swedish citizens realize that every abuse is worth reporting. We also think that many Swedes agree on that the shame and guilt that many victims feel is something they should not worry about. It's the perpetrator that should be ashamed and have to face serious consequences.
But the Swedish movement against the old rape legislation go way back before the Me Too campaign even started. The criticism for this old legislation started, it blew up and got some serious attention in 2013 when there was a case in which a 15-year-old girl was raped with a wine bottle by 3 young men until she bled. And the court's controversial verdict stated, and I quote, "People involved in sexual activities do things naturally to each other's bodies in a spontaneous way without asking for consent," end of quote. The court's ruling and their suggestion that the girl's refusal to open her legs might have been a sign of shyness made the widespread protest against this legislation explode. Note that the 3 young men later were convicted of rape in the Court of Appeals. But this was the particular case that sparked the movement Fatta, that in English means get it or understand, which had the goal of making sex without consent rape.
And Sweden is not the only country to have a legislation such as the law of consent. Other European countries like Germany and the United Kingdom also do. Women's rights activists said that they hoped other European countries would follow Germany, United Kingdom and Sweden's example and approve similar legislations. But I guess that we'll just have to wait and see what will happen internationally.
The Swedish National Statistic of Crime Prevention says in its report from September 2018 that the number of women and men that states that they have been a subject to sexual harassment of some kind has risen steadily in the 5 past years. The causes of this is a little bit unclear, but it can either be caused by the crimes being more frequent or the number of unreported cases have dropped, maybe due to psychological changes in the Swedish society. And with a population of 16 to 84 in mind, 6.4% say that they have been a subject to at least one of the sexual offenses during 2017 alone. This is compared to the 4.7% in 2016. This dramatic increase happened exactly at the same time as the Me Too campaign blew up. Also note that the statistic difference between men and women are gigantic. The comparison is 10.7% of women compared to the 1.6% of men that say they have been a victim of at least one of the sexual offenses.
Even though the number of police reports has risen quite a lot, the number of convictions has not. And this can be a result of the police lacking resources, which they do, the difficulty to legally prove rape and other sexual offenses, since it's usually words against words. And the number of convicted criminals might rise with our new legislation in place, since the main thought behind it was to make it easier to convict rapists.
The movement has caused big effects on the society afterwards. Many people have started to pay attention to this issue and are thinking about their behavior now, especially men and boys. Society has gotten a different view on what one can report to the police. Earlier, and still today, many women feel ashamed when they have been victims of sexual assault or harassment. But with the Me Too movement, a lot of women got the courage to actually report the crimes that they have been a victim of. Generally, we all have noticed that the hashtag has led to new thoughts about what kind of jokes are okay and not, and that many guys have started to think about what they're doing, like their actions that can be perceived as sexual harassment. Studies have shown that the awareness of the problem has grown, and Me Too has created a new mindset in many people, which is a very positive effect.
None of us has seen the actual hashtag #MeToo in the social media in a while, but just because the hashtag is dead doesn't mean that the deeper meaning behind it is. All of us three agree that the ideas that the hashtag stands for still are visible both in the media and in society. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the hashtag #MeToo is dead. And as we previously mentioned, the Me Too campaign led to other hashtags, which we have not seen lately either, but the awareness has not died out, and that's the important thing and the goal behind the entire movement.
And even though Me Too has resulted in a public conversation about this important issue, we are still so far away from a society where women can feel the same security as men can do when they're, for example, walking home on a dark road. It is so important that we continue to talk about this, because why should women need to feel that they are a target out in the world and that they're being underrated men? The importance of women's need to feel safe and equal with men is something I cannot point out enough. And just because this hashtag is dead doesn't mean that the fight for women's rights is over. And hopefully in the future, women in Sweden and all over the world will have the courage to go to the police when they've been sexually harassed, and that men will understand that these types of things are not okay. Sexism is never okay. We need to teach our children in an early age how to treat women to prevent these types of crimes. But it's not only about the crimes. It's about the society's view on women, and that men during the world history has been the strong leaders, and that women always has been supposed to stay at home. It's simply the patriarchy that is the fundamental problem to all of the oppression against women. Thank you so much for listening to us.
If you have any questions, you're welcome to raise your hands or come and talk to us later. So thank you.